Welcome back to Books and Beyond with That Guy Jay. I am, of course, your host, That Guy Jay, and this is kind of a special episode. I'm recording this on exactly the 1 year anniversary of posting episode 1 of this podcast. It's kind of crazy to me that it's already been a year. And before we get into the episode, if you could just take a quick second to smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and share this with anyone who you might think would enjoy it, I would greatly appreciate it. For 1 year of Books and Beyond, I thought that this episode would be great to just discuss what I've actually learned through 1 year of podcasting. But before we get into that, I think we should bring back something that I haven't done in a while, and that's the watch of the day. Today's watch of the day is the Orient Bambino Small Seconds. This is one of my only dress watches in my collection. I don't wear dress watches terribly often because I dress pretty casually, but this is one of my favorite watches overall, and it's a shame that I don't wear it more, so I'm just trying to wear it even with slightly more casual outfits. But from there, let's just jump into the episode. So what have I actually learned from a year of podcasting? Absolutely nothing. And that's all the time we have today. I will see you again next week. Imagine I had zero personal growth over the last year and I had nothing to share right now, and that was the whole episode. I'm, of course, just kidding. I'm sorry. That's the dad joke in me. I had to do it. I feel like I have learned a ton from this podcast, and I've had ups, I've had downs, I've had struggles, but I have learned a lot. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about how much goes on behind the scenes with a podcast. There's so much more to it than just hitting record and then throwing it up on the internet and hoping that people listen. I guess we could probably start with my biggest frustration, and it has to do with exactly this, and that's promotion. I hate promoting the podcast now, and it's not because I dislike trying to come up with promotional ideas or sharing clips or those type of things, but everything nowadays really does live and die by the algorithm, and I have learned the hard way that the algorithm absolutely hates when you try and mention any other platform. If you try and do anything that promotes something that is outside of their platform, they are not a fan. TikTok especially suppresses almost every piece of promotional video that I put out. I found that even YouTube Shorts will suppress when I try to promote the podcast, and I am pushing people to just a different video within their own app. These algorithms are really good, and it seems like they are fully able to detect any time that you mention another platform, anytime you promote something that would take someone's eyeballs off of their platform. This has been a real challenge, and it's something that I am still working on. If you have any suggestions, I would love to hear them in the comments, because I've had some phenomenal guests and I've had some amazing conversations, and I really think that a lot of them didn't get the love that they deserved. I've had on some authors that shared amazing insights and tips for new authors, for up-and-coming authors. There's great information there, and not a ton of people saw those particular episodes for some reason, which is pretty frustrating because they were some of my favorite conversations. Now, of course, I have also had technical issues. I think that that's going to be part of any podcast or any type of content creation. Sometimes things go wrong. I've had a bunch of scares with my recording software where it didn't properly upload the guests portion, and I was terrified that I was going to have to reach out and be like, hey, that great 60-minute conversation we just had, you want to have it again because the footage is lost? But each time I have been able to recover it. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, no issues yet, and I am always looking for ways to improve in that area as well. I would say that's about it in terms of like negatives with the podcast, and they're not necessarily negatives. They're just different things that I need to learn, and I need to improve on things like promotion, and I need to continue to better understand the software that I'm using and find backup ways just in case something goes wrong. And that just comes with learning and growing. Now, on the flip side, I think there has been a ton of positives that I have gained and learned from this podcast. When I started my content creation journey about a year and a half ago, I was very shy and I was very afraid to post myself. And I've mentioned this many times, and I'm an extremely socially anxious person. That's been something I've struggled with since I was a teenager. And without realizing it, TikToks, and then later this podcast, especially because long form does this even more so, this has become unintentional exposure therapy. I didn't mean for it to be that, but it's 100% become that. I've really had to work on coming outside of my shell and putting myself out there more, trying new things, trying to be less nervous in front of the camera. I've especially had to deal with that in terms of the social aspect because I've had most of these episodes have had a guest. And turns out you cannot get a guest if you are unwilling to reach out and speak to people. And I have had fantastic luck in that regard. I've had some amazing guests. And I think that's another thing that I've learned through this podcast is that people are a lot more willing to say yes to things than you think within your own head. I've had several guests where I didn't think that I was going to get a response and I didn't think that I was going to be able to work out a way to get them on the podcast. And they've gone on to be some of my most popular episodes and some of the most fun episodes that I've had. The Book Talk community in particular has been super supportive, but not just that, I have met people outside of the book sphere, which has been really cool getting to connect with people in other hobbies that I had stepped away from for a long time. And I think the coolest aspect of this podcast is that I think I've started to build some actual genuine friendships with people. I have guests that I still speak to on a fairly regular basis. I have multiple guests who I'm going to have on again in the future. They said that they would love to come on again, and I would love to have them back. So that's something that I'm going to be working on next year is having some repeat guests. I'm still constantly always looking out for new people to try and connect with. And I think it really has done wonders for me and my anxiety. This doesn't mean that I'm going to go outside and be the life of the party anytime soon or feel super comfortable out in public, but I definitely don't think this is hurting at all. And I think that it's a massive positive for me and my anxiety. And I think that this has given me a lot of purpose. It's given me something to work for every week, despite the challenges that I have. And that's again one of my other big takeaways from this. And if anyone were to ask me for advice on podcasting, now that I have 1 year of experience, I feel like I could share some knowledge if anyone was just starting out. And one of the biggest things I would say is there is so much more to this, especially on the back end. I really didn't know how to edit when I started, and I'm by no means an expert editor now, but I've had to learn quite a bit about DaVinci Resolve to get these episodes out. I have learned about ways to try and improve my video quality, my audio quality. I'm constantly testing out different recording methods. And I look back to my first episodes and I think the conversations were great, but I don't think my execution was nearly as good as it is now. And I think that my execution will continue to improve. But like I was saying, I've had to learn. I chose DaVinci Resolve because it's free. I've done everything with this podcast on a budget. My entire setup is pretty budget friendly, which I think goes to show that you can start a podcast even with limited supplies. It really is about the conversation and the topics, not necessarily having the absolute best camera lighting setup in a studio. I think I've done pretty well for myself. We're currently in my bedroom and I've set up this little content creation space that I make a lot of my TikToks at. And I've expanded it over the year. I've added a record player over here. I always have whatever record is playing up here. I've got some signs. I'm improving my lighting. And with Christmas coming, I think what I'm going to be asking for is probably some better lighting situations because, like I said, when I got started, I bought super budget stuff. And after a year of use, they're kind of starting to show some issues in general. And they were never quite the right thing for the job to begin with. But I didn't know because I was inexperienced. And on the back end, the things that you don't think about, or at least I didn't think about, and this is again something that I think I could offer as advice to anyone who may be listening who is interested in starting a podcast, is you really need to work on your networking, your communication. You have to respond to people in a timely manner. You have to set things up in a timely manner. It's hard to schedule things, weeks or months out because life can change so much. You kind of got to strike when the iron is hot. If someone says they're free, you got to find a way to jump on it and make it work. You also, like I said, have to get creative with the promotion. I tried clips for a while. Those didn't work. I've started using emails with an email list, and I'm posting to every platform that I can think of. And you really just kind of have to get creative with a lot of that. And I would say for every hour episode, you have to expect to have at least 1 to 2 hours for editing. You're going to need time for promotional material. You're going to need time for coming up with topics and scripts and questions and research for the guests ahead of time. So I think for every 1 hour episode that I have, there's probably at least, I don't know, 6 to 8 hours into that episode by the time it goes live. This is more time consuming than you originally think it's going to be. I suppose there are some out there that can just press play and wing it and speak for 60 minutes and then throw it up with minimal editing and it works for them. I have found that to not be the case for me. I don't have to do a ton of editing, but especially on my solo episodes, there are a lot of times where I'll just kind of be like, what did I want to say again? And I edit out those awkward pauses and I try to edit out any weird mouth noises when I'm starting a sentence. And I'm just trying to fine tune everything because I don't want to be up in someone's ears sounding gross. But I think my biggest takeaway is just problem solving. I think that having a podcast and being a one man show with this podcast has taught me how to be prepared for the unexpected and how to solve problems as they arise because they will arise. Not every episode has had issues, but a lot of them have had some form of an issue, whether it be a light dying. My ring light recently died a couple weeks ago, so I've had to adjust my lighting setup. I've had recording software not work for certain guests because they were on their phone and the software didn't work on the phone. So I always have to have a backup ready to go just in case we need to record an alternative way. There may be something that pops up in editing that I've never seen before or an issue with the audio. Like I said, I've had to learn how to try and create better audio as well. When I first started, I just edited the video and audio file together. Now I actually separate them and work on making the audio sound as clear as I can and then editing the video. It's a multi-step process compared to what I used to do, but I think I'm getting better at it. I hope I am. But there's so much unexpected things that can happen, and I think I've gotten better at remaining calm through them, not panicking when things go wrong. I still sometimes have this feeling in my chest like when my heart sank when I get done recording an episode and I immediately get an error message pop up. But I've learned that it's usually fixable, and I found ways to prevent that from happening. But now when they do happen, I don't have that same panic feeling, and I know that I can figure it out. And my absolute biggest takeaway from a year of podcasting is that there are a lot of really cool people out there in this community and some of my other hobbies communities that are super willing to talk about their passions, and they get really excited to speak about their passions. And it's really cool to listen to them, to learn from them, to get to know them better. I even had a chance to reconnect with a cousin on here that I hadn't spoken to much in recent years. There are all these technical things that go into podcasting, but at its core, it is about the conversation. It is about the topics that are discussed. Even when it's just myself, I have gotten to explore some pretty cool topics, at least to me. I've learned a lot more about myself from talking alone. I have learned a lot more about my hobbies by talking about them and researching things to discuss on here. But my favorite episodes are the ones with the guests, and I really enjoy the conversations. So, after a quick look back at the last year, what am I hoping for in the next year? Because this podcast isn't going anywhere. I'm just getting started. I still have so many ideas, so many ways that I want to improve. So, let's talk about what to expect on year 2 of Books and Beyond. In the coming year, I'm hoping to not get sick back to back in the spring so that I end up missing several weeks like I did this year. That was a huge challenge. I had COVID followed by bronchitis only 2 or 3 weeks later. That was pretty terrible. So we're hoping that that doesn't happen again. But I am hoping that I am able to find new and better ways to promote this podcast so that I can get even more eyes on it. Because like I've said in previous episodes, I want this to become a large enough platform so that when the guests come on, that they can see a bump in whatever project they're working on where the community can go and support them as well. That's a big dream of mine. I'd like to continue giving a platform for indie authors. I have a few indie books that I need to work on reading in the coming weeks because I would like to get the authors on as guests. I would like to continue finding guests outside of the book space and find even more people passionate about niche things. I think it's really cool to talk to anybody about any hobby that they are passionate about. I want to continue finding new things that I'm passionate about. I have really loved reconnecting with photography over the last year. I would love to have more photographers on in the future. I would love to make some changes to my setup, including lighting. I think there's some audio tweaks that I could make, and I'm going to continue researching and working on those. I think that there's also improvements I can make to my room just to help with the echo and the ambient noise levels. So those are things that I'm going to continue to work on and research. And overall, the goal for next year is just to continue to improve and continue to have interesting conversations with interesting people. I think that if each week I can improve even 1%, it'll make a massive difference to the overall product. And by the end of next year, and I'll be looking back like I am now at episode 1 being like, "Ooh, that was a thing. It was maybe not my best quality work, but I'm still proud of it. I'm still really happy with it. I had a fantastic conversation with one of my mutuals for episode 1, Annie Wilkes. It was a really great conversation. And I think that the conversation holds up. I just think that I could have done a better job with lighting, editing, audio, pretty much everything. I didn't even have a thumbnail for episode 1. That's another thing that I've definitely improved on, and I'm still trying to get better there. That's an area where I really would like to improve a lot. I make my thumbnails in Canva, and I think I do an okay job, but I am trying to learn Canva better. But overall, more than that, I'm trying to learn graphic design a little bit better. I'm trying to make things that are eye-catching, but not over the top or clickbaity. And it's a really fine line, but it's crazy how much thumbnails seem to matter on YouTube, especially. So that's a skill that I definitely would like to improve. And hopefully over the next year, I will continue to improve that. I have some ideas where I would like to actually get together maybe a panel of people to discuss a topic. I have multiple friends in the Watch Talk community where I think it could be cool to have a specific topic and have kind of a panel type episode. I've never tried that before. I've only had singular guests, but there are also other podcasts that I would love to collaborate with and see if I could get them on where they have co-hosts. So it would end up being two guests, which I think could also be interesting. Over the next year, I just want to continue to experiment and try new things and just get better at the basics every single day. But that about does it for me and this week's 1 year anniversary episode of Books and Beyond. Real quick, before we go, I just want to thank everybody for the support that I have received. I have gotten some fantastic comments. I've received some extremely kind messages, and there are several people that I know watch every single episode, and I truly appreciate it. I was really nervous to start this podcast a year ago, and I still sometimes get pretty nervous to put out the episodes because again, I'm an anxious person and it is not supernatural for me to talk this much or to open myself up this much, but I hope that I'm getting better at it. I hope that I continue to improve and I hope that I can continue to provide some value to the listeners, the viewers, and thank you so much for the support. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. Don't forget to hit that like button on your way out. I will see you again next week. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your week for Books and Beyond with that guy Jay.